Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. I'd like to invite you to join us on our next show. We have the Attorney General for the state of Louisiana, former Attorney General, Richard Ieyoub. He also ran for governor, and he's going to talk to us about what it was like being the Attorney General, what his observations are and suggestions he might have for the new Attorney General, Mr. Foti. And also he's going to talk to us about what it was like to campaign for governor, talking to hundreds of thousands of people and all the issues that were important to them, including health insurance and taxes and schools and the economy. So we're going to have on the next show Attorney General Richard Ieyoub. Join us, please. Welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have on the show today Richard Ieyoub. Richard had been our Attorney General for the entire state for numerous years and ran for governor. Richard, thank you so much for being on the show.
With you.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I wanted to get you back on the show. We talked while you were running for governor, and of course since the election has occurred, and I think you have a vast amount of experience and knowledge to communicate to the folks, and so I want to get you back on the show.
Happy to be here.
Well, tell me first of all, for those who haven't seen the first show, a little bit of personal history about yourself.
Well, I was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and went to schools there in Lake Charles, then attended McNeese State University in undergraduate school, then went to LSU Law School, received my law degree. After graduating from LSU, I worked with the Attorney General's office in the criminal division as a prosecutor and investigator. I was in that job for about 2.5 years and went back home to Lake Charles and practiced law. I did civil litigation, criminal defense work, and after I practiced law for approximately 10 years, I ran for district attorney of Calcasieu Parish and was elected in 1984. I served a full 6-year term and ran again without opposition and was elected.
And then decided to run
for Attorney General
for the state of Louisiana.
That's correct.
And a big difference in the folks who you're representing at that point in time.
Absolutely right. Of course, Calcasieu Parish with Lake Charles is one of the larger parishes. However, when you're running statewide, it's a lot different.
And you weren't picked to win, were you?
No, not at all. And very few people had heard of Richard Ieyoub when I ran for Attorney General in 1990-91. But we were very successful. We ran a very hard and aggressive campaign. And I'm very happy to say that in that election, my first election for Attorney General, we received more votes than any person in the history of Louisiana politics.
And that was how many votes?
Over 1 million votes, so probably about 1.2 million votes.
It's a lot of
1.2 million votes, I'm sorry. And that's the most that has ever been received by any candidate for any office in Louisiana political history, so that was quite an election.
And then you served as Attorney General for the state of Louisiana for how many years?
12 years.
12 years.
3 terms, right.
And then decided that that you were being basically called to run for governor.
Correct.
All right, tell me about that.
Well, we accomplished a lot, I thought, in the 12 years that I was Attorney General. We had many programs. We totally changed the aspect of the Attorney General's office. We changed it from somewhat of a narrow, focused organization to a multi-faceted organization and agency, which got involved with programs that had a direct impact on the lives of Louisiana citizens, whether it be in giving drug abuse education to our children, creating a safe school plan, which we sent to every school district in the state of Louisiana, going out trying to do something about creating a program to stop underage consumption of alcohol, trying to do something about weapons in schools. We got involved with so many things. Our investigative division, as you know, was very instrumental in finding the serial killer.
And in fact, in addition to all of those things, you're representing the interests of the state.
Exactly.
In the courts.
In the courts. We, of course, defended the state in any type of litigation that was filed against the state. Whenever there was legislation and the constitutionality of any particular state statute was challenged, we had to defend the constitutionality of the legislation.
And then, of course, involved in the tobacco litigation.
The tobacco litigation was, I think, a very historic thing. From the standpoint of the number of lives that will eventually save, it was monumental. Not to mention the fact that we brought in $4.6 billion
with a B
to the state of Louisiana And my goodness, with the deficit that we have now, I don't know where we'd be had we not gotten the $4.6 billion in that lawsuit. But as I say, we filed that lawsuit because we believed that at certain times there were actions being taken by some of the companies that would infringe upon the rights of young people. In other words, their advertising was particularly directed to trying to entice young people to get involved with smoking, which we all know is injurious to your health.
Can kill you.
It can absolutely kill you after a period of years. So we're going to have a lot healthier population. In addition to that, we help the economy of the state with the $4.6 billion. And that $4.6 billion was obtained for the state without the taxpayers having to pay 1 cent of any legal fees.
Tell me about the serial killer involvement. You mentioned that your agency had been involved in that, the Attorney General's office.
Our investigative team was called in by certain local police agencies, one being the Zachary Police Agency, and as well as the East Feliciana Sheriff's Office, West Feliciana Sheriff's Office, to investigate 2 murders which occurred in that vicinity. In the course of that investigation, one of our investigators learned about Derek Todd Lee. He did a complete criminal history background check on Derek Todd Lee and saw that this man fit the profile of a stalker, someone that would stalk women, a peeping Tom type of character. So he went and he interrogated Derek Todd Lee and felt that it would be a good idea to take a DNA sample from Lee.
And when was this?
This was, oh gosh, this was about a year ago now, you know, and at the time the serial killer was at large. So he did it right. He got a court order. The investigator got a court order based on an affidavit with probable cause to establish that the swab should be taken. After he got the court order, he actually went to Derek Lee Todd's home and took the swab, the DNA swab, and that swab connected him with the killings that took place.
That was the pivotal piece of evidence.
That was the pivotal thing. That was the actual break in the case. And after we connected the DNA that our investigator took of Derek Todd Lee, then
it all came together.
It all came together.
I know that you had made some criticism after the election of kind of the handling. At least that was my interpretation of the interview on TV. Tell me a little bit about that.
Are you talking about the serial killer
case?
Yes, sir. Well, we were not very involved in the task force that had been put together to try to find the serial killer because we offered our assistance initially, and we were told that it was not necessary that we participate. Obviously, when we found out that we were dealing with a serial killer that was terrorizing the entire parish and the entire state, I offered all the resources of my office, all of the personnel, all of the technical equipment that we had to the task force and asked to try to be a part of that with them. And we were told we were not necessary, they did not need us. Then we got together with the other law enforcement officers in another investigation, and that's what led to the...
I want to talk a little bit more about that on our next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. We'll be right back with Richard Ieyoub. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, very pleased to have on the show Richard Ieyoub. Richard was the Attorney General for the entire state of Louisiana and ran for governor. Again, Richard, thank you very much.
Locke, good to be here.
We were talking about, basically, it sounds like, I guess a screw-up as far as coordination of all of the resources available to investigate Derek Todd Lee. Talk to me a little bit more about that. I don't understand that.
Well, of course, I'm not criticizing anyone or anybody, any task force or what have you, but in some cases, there is mistrust which exists between different law enforcement agencies, unfortunately, and in many cases there is a concern over turf, in other words, authority that is exerted by different law enforcement agencies. Some agencies don't want other agencies involved in those jurisdictions or in those jurisdictional questions which they think that they have sole authority over. And
I'm thinking of scenes in TV programs where the feds come in, you know, and they're confronting the state police officers, and they kind of hate each other. I mean, is that real?
It was real at one time, more so in the past than now. At one time, state agencies didn't trust the federal authorities didn't trust state agencies, but to a large extent that's been eliminated. And I'm very happy to say that federal and state agencies are working much closely together now.
In fact, the feds were pulled in on this investigation.
The feds were pulled in on this particular task force. But at times, politics and turf gets involved in any kind of task force or any kind of joint investigation. And as a result, there's friction between the agencies and there's no coordination. Sometimes that happens, unfortunately, because personally, I think task forces in cases like serial killings are very important in the way of being able to solve the crime.
So where was the ball dropped? I guess it sounds like because they didn't get the Attorney General's office involved much sooner in the process, because then that provides all kinds of resources and manpower. Is that
Well, that was a decision that was made by some of the members of the task force. I don't know exactly why they made that decision. And the fact of the matter is, we are just very, very thankful that one of our investigators in investigating another crime, which incidentally has recently been tied with Derek Todd Lee.
I saw that.
Recently, they've established that he was involved in that particular, or they have evidence to establish that. One of our investigators was able to get the DNA sample that led to his apprehension. And that was Danny Mixon, of course. As you know, I commended Danny Mixon publicly. He did a fantastic job. He used his head. He used good investigatory tactics. Once he had the criminal history background, he went and got a court order to establish probable cause, which was very important.
Did everything properly.
As you know, because had he not done that, that evidence would be attacked today in court.
It could be thrown out by a judge.
It could be thrown out by a court because you need probable cause to conduct an investigation, even if it's a DNA swab. But he got a court order signed by a judge, so I think we're solid on that point.
And he's going to go down. Lee's going to go down.
And as a result of that DNA sample taken by one of our investigators, he was apprehended.
What would you say is a way to avoid this problem in the future of turf concern or not coordinating all the resources available? What do you do?
Well, I just think that there should be periodic meetings, maybe. There should be more interaction between the agencies. We should try to build more trust between the relationships.
That's what it boils down
between the agencies. We have to put aside our personal likes and dislikes and realize that we're all out there to do one thing, and that's to protect the people of Louisiana. We have to put their interest ahead of your own selfish interest, and we have to stop worrying about jurisdictional authority and different turf. So that's what we really have to do.
And how would that be accomplished? Just say we're going to have annual meetings amongst the various department heads and state agencies?
Annual meetings. We can have annual meetings. We can have monthly meetings. We can have meetings between the directors of the various agencies. We can do all types of things to establish. We can certainly share intelligence information. If we have some intelligence information that we think the FBI might be interested in, let's share that. Let's show them that we trust them, and we don't necessarily want to keep this to ourselves. It's just a trust-building process. And once you've established that trust between the agencies, you can get a lot more done.
Mr. Foti has ran for your previous office of Attorney General, and he won. Mm-hmm. And I assume that would be perhaps one recommendation or suggestion you would make to him.
I would. I think that it would be very, very good for him to try to bring everybody together to make sure that the agencies are willing to work together. Now, he was Sheriff Foti. He was a sheriff, obviously, of Orleans Parish before becoming Attorney General.
So he's probably familiar with that.
He's very familiar with the Sheriff's Association and with other law enforcement agencies. And I think that he will do whatever he can to pursue a course of action where there's more cooperation between the law enforcement agencies. in and around the Baton Rouge area and the entire state.
Now, I understand that he has maintained a lot of the programs that were initiated during your tenure and has kept on a lot of the personnel.
Right, and I'm very pleased to see that. I believe we had some great people on our staff. We accomplished a tremendous amount. A lot of the programs which we initiated, like You Drink, You Drive, You Walk, which was a program to try to raise the drinking age as well as prevent minors from consuming alcohol. They were chosen as some of the best programs in the nation. That program was chosen as one of the 23 best programs in the United States.
Wow.
In the way of doing something about underage consumption of alcohol. Our school protection program, our school safety program, after Columbine, we initiated a program, put together a coordinated plan for all the schools in the state of Louisiana to implement in the event there was violence. It involved law enforcement, school administrators, psychologists. We put it on a CD-ROM and we gave it to every school district in the state of Louisiana. And if you will notice recently, a lot of violence that may have begun in some of the schools was stopped because of this plan. The Dutchtown incident, right. There was an anonymous tip that these kids were getting ready to plan a Columbine-type massacre. Now, we initiated that anonymous-type tip program where students could feel safe in giving an anonymous tip to a principal or administrator where they could act on it. And so, thank God, we were saved a lot of violence.
You know what I love is that Mr. Fody is not being competitive or not going to say, you know, that was done by Mr. Ieyoub, I'm going to come up with my own thing. He is being smart and intelligent and using the programs that have been successful and is not competing. And I think that that's the measure of success that he's going to bring to the office.
I think so, too. And obviously, I've made it very clear to him, not only during the campaign, but now, that I'm willing to help him in every way possible. I want him to be a very great success because it's a very important job and we need the AG to be successful.
I agree with you. Next, what we're going to do on the next program segment is talk about the campaign, what it was like. Okay. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines, and we're with Richard Ieyoub, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, very pleased to have on our show Richard Ieyoub. Richard was the former Attorney General for the entire state of Louisiana and ran for governor in this past election. Again, Richard, thanks.
Locke, thank you very much.
Let's talk about the campaign. You talked to hundreds of thousands of people, political leaders all over the state. To me, you would seem to probably have a whole lot of information that you could communicate to us as the general public and the new administration. Right. Let's talk about it.
Well, you know, obviously running for governor of the state of Louisiana is a very difficult thing from the standpoint of the time that you have to put in it, the stress that you're under, the intensity of it just about every single day. The pressure. You want to talk to as many people as you possibly can. You want to make sure that you're doing the best you can to get your message across, to try to convince the voters that you are the individual that can take this state and give it the leadership that it so badly needs. So it's a very, very difficult undertaking from that standpoint.
When did you start the process? How long did you campaign for governor?
Oh, I know at least 2 years to
Goodness
3
gracious.
years. You know,
and I guess as you get closer, then it becomes an all-consuming day after day event.
It becomes a day-by-day thing. And obviously you have your highs and your lows. You will hear good news about the progress of the campaign in various areas of the state. And then you'll get some bad news that such and such is happening in another part of the state. So it's just like an emotional roller coaster, I would say. And it's very difficult on a family.
I bet.
You obviously don't get very much of an opportunity to spend time with your children.
And Caprice, your wife, actually went out on the trail with you towards the end there, didn't she?
She was a great support. Obviously, if you don't have a wife and family that is supportive, you're not going to be able to run for any office, effectively. So I was blessed with having a great wife and great children to support me in my endeavor to try to be governor of the state.
Let's talk about what the various leaders at the local level and the people told you as being the main issues on their mind and of concern to them.
I think the people concentrated a lot, obviously, on the economy, jobs. We had a very serious problem with out-migration of our young people because once they graduated from Louisiana schools, they could not find sufficient jobs, so they left Louisiana and went to Dallas and Atlanta and other places. We have a brain drain, so to speak, in Louisiana, so we have to really pump up the economy, create jobs in Louisiana for our young people to keep them here. If the outmigration continues at the rate it has been going, we're going to be in serious trouble. So, I mean, we're going to have a lot of problems.
Well, and I'm hearing that the cost of natural gas, which is used by all the refineries and plants here, has skyrocketed. And what we're seeing, and I heard Dr. Lawrence Scott, who's an economist, an economic guy, who talks to the legislature all the time, saying what we're going to see over the next several years is a migration of our plants, of our refineries overseas because gas is cheap.
Right.
And then what are we going to do?
Well, see, that's very important, and that's one reason why we have to take a look at our system of business taxes, and I think the Governor Blanco is looking at that right now. We have a system of business taxes that are really adverse to bringing in more industry and business into the state.
In fact, we lost the State Farm
That's
folks.
right. Well, we have taxes on manufacturing, machinery, and equipment. We have taxes on all types of things that businesses have to use in order to create a business situation in Louisiana.
So it makes it more expensive for them to operate here.
It makes it more expensive to operate in Louisiana. We have to take a real look at that. In light of situations as the rise in natural gas prices, I mean, they're being hurt to where they're not expanding. They're not only not expanding, but if it continues, they're going to start shutting down some of the plants.
And she knows that.
Of course.
The governor knows that, and she's looking at it.
She is definitely looking at that.
What were the other big issues?
Education is extremely important. In elementary and secondary education, the accountability programs have shown that they are improving our children's education.
Now, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean, accountability program.
Well, there are a series of requirements and standards that each school has to meet.
For the teachers and students.
For the teachers and students. We have to make sure that we do it fairly and in the correct way, but we need some standard, we need some incentive to ensure that our children are getting the best education possible. I think one of the things that is extremely important is early childhood education. We should have early childhood education for every child in the state of Louisiana, because if you get those children at the age of 3 and 4 years old and begin to teach them at that age, they're going to be successful once they get into elementary and secondary
And if you don't have an education, you are handicapped.
That's right. But don't forget one important thing in Louisiana, and that's teacher pay. We've got to try to raise teacher pay in Louisiana.
And how do you do that?
Well, when I ran for governor, I proposed a tax on tobacco. It would have raised the necessary money to give all of the teachers a raise, and it would have brought them up to the national average. The tobacco tax has proven to be very successful in other states. In addition to creating a situation where you would discourage children from smoking, you're raising enough money to pay our teachers. And I think that they're looking at that right now. It's the less onerous tax. I mean, if you have to tax, and certainly with our deficit, we just can't get the money out of the sky. You've got to come up with some way to raise that money, and I think a tobacco tax is the less onerous tax. It not only helps the health of the people, but it creates the money you need to help your teachers.
What about health insurance? Was that discussed?
Health care is extremely important. We have 3 million Louisianians that have no insurance whatsoever, no medical insurance whatsoever. Those people are hurting. Our charity hospital system is hurting. Those individuals that live in the outlying areas of the state and the rural areas find it very difficult to get the type of treatment they need. I'm talking about those that can't afford normal medical treatment.
So how do you fix it?
Well, you fix it, first of all, by trying to do something about spreading out our treatment facilities to where you have local parish treatment facilities, health concerns, where it's close to the people that they can get to easily, instead of going to private hospital emergency rooms where they are treated, and then the cost of having to treat them is passed on to everybody else, all of the other taxpayers.
An indirect tax.
Indirect tax. That's why our medical insurance is going sky high.
What what are your future plans? I know you ran for governor. You raised, what, over $1 million easy?
I raised close to $4.8 million, right.
And had, how many folks voted for you?
Oh, I think over 200,000. I was very close to making the runoff. I think Ms. Blanco beat me by 25,000 votes of getting into the runoff.
And what are your plans for the future? I know that there's a Senate seat open. What you thinking?
Well, I don't know. I haven't made up my mind on that yet, but I can tell you I'm practicing law, and I'm spending more time with my family, and I'm going to look to the future. I'm not out of the political world yet. I still have a lot to do.
Richard, thank you so much for being on the show. This is Legal Lines with Locke Meredith. We'll see you next time.